Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the webinar on mobile home park funding. It's being presented by the Division of Housing and staff from the Office of Housing Finance and Sustainability, along with support from staff at the Mobile Home Park Oversight Program and the Colorado Poverty Law Project. This webinar follows the Manufactured Home Community Sales Law webinar that took place on February 5th at 12 noon. The link to that webinar's materials will be placed in the chat. Next slide. So we are using Zoom today. If you need to ask a question, or if you want to ask a question, please use the chat box on the bottom center of the screen. We will be monitoring the chat. We will also watch for raised hands, recognizing that feature may be easier if you're on a phone. Thank you. So before we do our introductions, we wanted to know if there's anyone in attendance who has received a notice of intent to sell from the owner of their park. If you have, would you please type the name of your park in the chat? Thank you. So presenting today and supporting the webinar are myself, Shirley Diaz, the Housing Development Specialist for Southwest Colorado. Next is Pam.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Pam Gibson. I'm a Housing Development Specialist working in 6 counties on the Northern Front Range and in the mountain communities. Jose will introduce himself next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Trujillo, and I am the homeownership team assets manager. And next is Malia Garcia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Malia Garcia. I'm a housing asset manager team lead on our federal housing assets team. And I'll pass it over to Fallon.
Thank you, Malia. I am Fallon Miller, Housing Development Specialist, Rural Team Manager for the Division of Housing. And I am going to turn it over to Michelle.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Gurule, and I am the Community Outreach Liaison for the Mobile Home Oversight Group. And next, I'll pass it on to Blair.
Hi, everyone. I'm Blair Canis. I'm an attorney with the Colorado Poverty Law Project, and we have a mobile home initiative that helps provide advocacy, education, and representation to mobile home residents. I'm going to pass it over to Joe with CPLP as well.
Yes, my name is Joseph Zimmerman. I am also an attorney with the Colorado Poverty Law Project.
So we're providing a disclaimer to establish the information in this presentation does not constitute legal advice or establish an attorney-client relationship. All information and materials are for educational purposes only. Thank you.
And Shirley, you did have 3 parks that were named in the chat that are currently for sale that they're working with.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm sure Michelle and Blair and Joe will grab those for us. So next is we want to identify the Office of Housing Finance and Sustainability teams that work with applicants in different capacities throughout the application and funding process. Your first contact to learn about funding and cover the application process is a housing development specialist like myself and Pam. We work with the buyers of a mobile home park from exploration to the submission of an application and then hopefully to receiving funding. We provide resources that can help the buyers with other funding and experts who can help with some of the specific documents required for application. Your housing development specialist will review all of the documents required for an application in advance so a complete application is submitted on or before the deadline. Next slide. Thank you. This is a map of our housing development specialists. The link will be put in the chat, and if you have a smartphone, you can take a picture of the QR code and it will take you to the page. There are 7 housing development specialists, and you can find the contact information for the housing development specialist in your region by the color of your county on the map or by finding your county on the list below the map. So the next team is our underwriters. An underwriter is assigned to each application to assess the completeness of the application and the financial viability of the project. The underwriter and housing development specialist work together when a project is being recommended for funding. The underwriter remains involved with the application and project until contracting requests confirmation that all of the funding conditions have been met. Then things get turned over to the third team within OHFS, and that's the asset management team. An asset manager is assigned to each mobile home project and serves as the primary contact throughout the life of the agreement. Initially, the asset manager reviews an applicant's current performance if they have received prior funding from the Division of Housing. They review documents for the project at the early stages and also later on. And they work with contracting and the applicant to execute an agreement. The asset manager monitors an agreement, the conditions until the conditions of the agreement are met. Toward the end of a mobile home park contract, the asset manager monitors the agreement for compliance and then closes it. So I'm going to pause here for questions. Are there any questions about the teams within our Office of Housing Finance and Sustainability, or OHFS? Okay. Next slide. Thank you. So now we're going to move into the agenda, and it's covered over several slides. First, we have the 3 parts of a purchase of a mobile home park. We will also be discussing mobile home park funding that's offered through the Division of Housing and who can apply for the funding, plus how the funding can be used. Then we move into the funding for infrastructure for mobile home parks, our application checklist, and all of the documents needed to submit an application with recommended timelines. And then we go into the details of some of the more complex documents. Next slide. Final agenda items are other funding sources to help reach a purchase price or full infrastructure costs, a unique funding source to help with pre-development costs for small organizations, and how community members and local governments might help with the acquisition of the park. We'll be pausing throughout the presentation to see if there are questions, and we also have time at the end of all of the topics in the presentation for questions and comments. So the 3 parts to complete the purchase. An owner of a park providing a notice of intent to sell triggers timelines under the Colorado law, the Mobile Home Park Act, for both the landlord and resident owners. The second part is the homeowners need to decide if they want to initiate the process to acquire the park and begin learning and deciding about their course of action and possible funding. And the third part involves the homeowners or an assigned buyer to work with the seller to submit an offer. Then the buyer applies for loans and grants and determines if the Division of Housing application cycle works with the purchase timelines. The buyer will work on a division of housing application and submit it on or before a due date. And once all of the funding is committed for acquisition, then the applicant closes on the purchase by a specific date. So the notice of intent to sell. This is how a park owner, when they provide an intent to sell notice, they trigger the law. The residents have a 120-day opportunity to make an offer to purchase their park once a notice is properly posted. The law, the Mobile Home Park Act, was discussed in the webinar on February 5th in depth, and we provided the link to that webinar in the chat at the beginning of this webinar. We're also adding the link, the statute listed here, into the chat. So other actions that bind an owner to the law's timeline are hiring a real estate broker, listing the park for sale, and taking any other action that demonstrates an intent to sell the park. So the second piece, once that notice is posted as required by law, the resident owners of homes need to meet and discuss if they want to try to purchase the park. Topics to cover include who can they meet with to help them decide if they want to buy the park? Can they buy and manage the park? And where can they learn more about what needs to be done to purchase the park? A decision to purchase the park needs to be made by a majority of the resident owners in order for the purchase to occur. It does not necessarily mean the residents need to purchase the park, because there are several entities under the law that residents can assign their purchase rights to, and that would still require the owner to continue to follow the 120-day timeline for an offer, and then another 120 days to close the park. And we will tell you about these entities in just a few minutes. So the final part is coordinating the purchase and speaking with your designated housing development specialist to determine if the Division of Housing funding cycle can meet a closing timeline. This is also the time to look for other funding sources to meet the purchase price. Some funding sources for mobile home park purchases are the Impact Development Fund, Rock USA, and possibly one of your local lenders. And this is also the time to look for grants if possible, and to have other entities look for grants also and pass them through to the buyer. During this time, park owners wanting to sell to the highest bidder will follow the law, but if the timeline is not met, then the owner can sell to the highest bidder. Other owners would like to sell to the residents or another entity under the law whose intent is to keep the park affordable for the residents. Both owners and renters to keep it affordable for the residents, both owners and renters. And these owners may extend timelines if needed. They will work with the buyers. Does anyone have any questions about these three parts that were just presented: the intent to sell notice, the homeowner residents organizing, or learning and deciding about purchasing the park? Okay, seeing none, Pam is going to discuss the next section.
Thank you, Shirley. Mobile home funding through Proposition 123. Proposition 123,
So
excuse me?
sorry, Pam. We
Yes.
just got a question that came in right as you started.
No problem.
And Michelle, can you please read that question?
I sure can. The question is from a Grand Valley board member, and this is a translation from Spanish to English. She said, "We are working with Thistle and right now they're looking for grants to get accessible housing.
So
So it's not really a question, but welcome, Grand Valley board member.
And Michelle, if you would just let them know as well that Thistle is aware of this program and should be in contact and help them get in contact with their housing development specialist for some funding.
Okay, moving along to Proposition 123. Proposition 123 is a relatively new source of funding that's generated by sales tax revenue. The Division of Housing manages this funding for home ownership projects, which includes the purchase or acquisition of mobile home parks and improvements to park infrastructure, and that includes utilities and roads. In order for a property to receive Proposition 123 funding, the local government where the mobile home park is located must have opted into the program. This means that the government has made an agreement with the state to increase the amount of affordable housing in their community over a period of time. So who can apply for this funding? For one, local governments that have opted into the program. You can link to this web page on the slide to find out if your city, town, or county is eligible to use this source of funds. Also, nonprofit organizations, housing authorities, and resident-owned communities, such as a manufactured housing neighborhood where residents collectively own and manage the land. Next, I'm going to send it back to Shirley to talk about how the funding is going to be used.
So our funding can be used to provide a low interest loan to a
Shirley,
newly, yes.
we
the
can no
slide.
longer see the slides. Malia, we
Yeah.
lost our slideshow.
Did we lose Malia? No, she's still there. Okay.
No, I'm here. Sorry about that. 1 second. Let me, I think we had an issue with the host and everything. Michelle, are you able to make me a host? Oh, I'm back as a host. Sorry. Let me do that.
Minor technical glitch.
Sorry about that, everyone. Or is it back up now?
It is. Thank you. Okay, we will return to our funding can be used to provide a low interest loan to a newly formed cooperative by the resident owners, but it is a grant to nonprofits, housing authorities, or local governments if they are assigned the rights to purchase. We can only provide funding for homes which are owner occupied, so no homes that are rented can be included in the funding request. And we provide up to $50,000 per home for parks located in urban communities and $55,000 per home for parks in rural areas. And it's based on the number of qualified households. The owners have to live in the home in the park as their primary residence, and they also cannot earn more than 100% of the area median income. Very quickly, this is an income calculation completed by HUD annually for every county in the country. The Division of Housing utilizes the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, or CHFA's, income tables, and your housing development specialist can provide you with the table and go over what the income limit is by household size in your county. An example of this information, a mobile home park in a rural county with 50 lots and 50 homes on it, where 5 homes are rented and 10 homes are not occupied by owners as a primary residence, assuming the other 35 homes have households that are owner occupied and earning under 100% AMI, then the buyer of the park could apply with us for $55,000 per home for 35 homes, or $1.925 million to help with the cost of the park. The Mobile Home Park Act only applies to owners of homes, just like our Division of Housing Funding. So do we have any questions now about how the funding can be used, or does anyone have a question about the funding itself?
There is one question in the chat. Is this based off AMI for 2024 or 2025? Currently, the 2025 limits have not been published for this program. So currently it is the 2024. When those 2025s get published, it will be based off the 2025.
Thank you, Fallon.
Yep.
No other questions? We will move on, and the next section is presented by Pam again.
One more question just came in.
Thank you.
By AMI of the owners, do you mean the average of all owners?
No, this is not an average. Actually, what is required is self-reported income for each homeowner in the park. So if there's 50 lots and 35 in the example are owner-occupied homes, then 35 households, and it would be the entire, what the income is for the entire household for all 35 owners, and it's self-reporting. So that gets collected and submitted as part of the application process.
So if one homeowner was over 100% AMI, does that disqualify the park?
No, that's why in the example, I actually said 15 of the 50 homes were not qualified. So even though the park price is for the entire park, we will only fund a portion of that purchase based on qualified owner-occupied households. So you can apply for funding for the 35 in our example, but the purchase is paying for the entire park to be purchased.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, excuse me. So looking at the application timeline, the Division of Housing accepts applications on a quarterly basis as posted on the division's website. Applicants apply online through a software program called Neighborly. Pre-applications are due 45 days prior to the full application date. Pre-application materials include a letter of intent to apply, a budget spreadsheet, and sections A through H in Neighborly. Completed applications are due 45 days after pre-application, as posted on the division's website. Next slide, please. Thank you. Staff's initial review of the application takes 10 days. If staff finds that there are missing information in that application, they will reach out to you and you will have 7 days to respond to questions or to submit any missing documentation. It's a good idea to make sure you are submitting a complete application by the application deadline, because 1 week is not a lot of time to pull things together. If there are any requested items still not submitted after these 7 days, the application will be unable to move forward in the current round and will likely be bumped to the next application round in our quarterly cycle. After we have all the information we need, we will review the complete packets and score the applications, and this takes 21 days. Next, applicants moving forward will attend a virtual State Housing Board meeting where the board members will review staff's recommendations for funding. The meeting will be held approximately 60 days after application submission. Upon board approval, you will receive an award letter confirming the amount and source of funds and funding conditions. This begins the state contracting process. A contract specialist will prepare and send you initial draft agreements within 30 days. Up to 10 days later, the final agreement will be sent to you for signature. The total time for the contracting process could be as short as 90 days if you choose a no negotiation contract, whereby you agree to accept the standard agreement template. If changes to the template are requested, the contract period would be extended. Are there any questions on the application timeline or Proposition 123 funding?
There is one question in the couple questions in the chat. So the first one, Chaffee County at Large Board of Directors position. This is great information. How can I serve our community? So being opted in for Prop 123 was the first step for Chaffee County. You know, any kind of offering any kind of partnerships possible for applying for these funds to help any communities that may need your help. Next question, can communities that are
Hold on, Fallon, let me jump in here and just respond to Dan's question.
Yeah.
Dan, it is true that there's 120 days allowed by state statute, but often sellers have to restart the time period based on new notices of sale. So hopefully with the restarting timelines and everything like that, you can hopefully resident-owned communities can meet the timelines that they need to.
I will say we've seen that happen with the majority of applications we've seen come through for this funding thus far, that the restarting has saved some of those timelines. Next question, can communities that are applying to essentially keep their community in their control, are you aware they are competing with government hired grant writers realistically?
I'll take that to start off. I'm not aware of them competing with government grant writers. It's typically the competition for the residents are like free market buyers. So LLCs out of state and in state that are wanting to buy the community, some of them to, kind of redesign it and develop another use, which really hurts, obviously, everybody living in the community. But there's also owners who, will they'll to follow the law, like I said, they will give the allowed time period, but we have seen others really where the seller wants to give it to the residents. They want to wait and make sure, and they will work with them. And the grant writers, so if the residents are trying to become a resident-owned community, a ROC, then they're typically not eligible for grants, but they can work with other nonprofits that are in their community that want to help them. I mean, getting that community investment in keeping the park affordable is really important. And so getting your elected officials and others tied into the sale and potential purchase by residents is really important to make that happen. If anybody else has an awareness of competition with some professional government sort of grant writers, please chime in.
There's some follow-up there. Are you aware they hire grant writers as well? And they are paid to write these grants and could place them at a disadvantage if they don't have a grant writer living in the area. So what I would speak to is that is part of the role of the housing development specialist that you'll be working with on your application. that they are going to help you make sure that you have the most competitive and complete application as possible. So as you're submitting and putting stuff into the neighborly application system, they will help offer feedback and stuff to help boost your application the best they can possible. Let
Yeah.
us know if you have follow-up.
I'm just going to add that when Pam went over the funding for Prop 123, a for-profit entity cannot apply for our funding. They cannot use it as a gap funder. Only the entities that we stated are allowed to apply for this funding. So the problem with a for-profit competitor who wants to buy the park is that they may have more access to cash. You're right, that or loans, and you know they make it work by, if they keep the park, by raising rents, the lot rents. So it's an affordability issue, you know, for certain.
All right, we have another question. Does Rock USA have local banking relationships in Colorado?
Rock has been operating in Colorado for quite some time. My knowledge is they operate in about 13 states. So we think of them as a national resource. And we have some more information coming up about Rock, but so my answer would be that my understanding is that their loans work with our banking, the Colorado bank loans as well, because they also do not typically fully fund a purchase. So they are working with Colorado banks, to my knowledge.
And we have a hand up. If you would like to come off mute, Karen. Or you are welcome to put stuff in the chat. Move on to the next question while we see if Karen wants to come off mute. Does the application process timeline include a bank commitment letter if applicable?
Yes, that is one of the documents that will be required for the application, is a letter of intent for a lender to be providing a source of funding for the purchase or for infrastructure as well.
And I just want to make sure everyone saw Ben's comment from Thistle. They do have several members of the team at Thistle on the call. They're Rock USA certified technical assistance provider here in Colorado. If you are a park resident with any questions about how they can support you, you're welcome to reach out, and he gave the email address to everyone. No problem, Karen. Next question. Are there any restrictions for these funds for mobile home parks if there are households that may be undocumented status?
If we're not checking the status. If they own the home, not rent it. So if they own it and they're only paying lot rent, then we would simply collect their income information as we would for every other household. So I'm not aware of any impossibility along the way, but we have Blair and Joe, who may have, in working with parks, experienced if there's any issues with undocumented owner households. Could one of you respond?
I will just add these are state and not federal funds, and so lawful presence does not apply here.
Yeah, I would just add that not just the Mobile Home Park Act, but landlord tenant law in general doesn't, undocumented status doesn't affect your ability to assert your rights, renters' rights in Colorado. There's also a law in Colorado called the Immigrant Tenant Protection Act that provides further protection for undocumented residents, both in mobile home parks and also in if you're living in a traditional housing. So I don't know if I want to get into that here, but I'm happy to connect further afterwards and we can talk more about it.
And that is it for questions for now.
Okay, thank you. Great questions. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jose to present on the application for infrastructure funding.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to go over a couple things. First thing, I'll go over the infrastructure application, and then I'll go over the application checklist. So to start with, the timeline for an infrastructure only application is going to be the same as presented on the previous slides for acquisition. So the same timelines as you saw before. I want to reiterate that we will only fund up to $50,000 per home in urban areas and up to $55,000 per home in rural areas based on the qualifying households. Next slide. An application for funding to support infrastructure improvements may include roads, water, electrical, and broadband, which is internet. Next slide. So I'm going to go over the application checklist. Next slide. So the application checklist contains all of the documents needed for an application for funding to support a property acquisition and/or infrastructure improvements. Next slide. So there's a link here, a webpage link to our website for the funding application. In order to get to the application checklist, you'll just kind of scroll down the page and you'll find that checklist in the instructions and reference material section. We should also include that link in the chat. Next slide. So I'm going to basically just kind of go down the list of items on that application checklist. I'm going to explain a few things before I go through this. One, you're going to see some numbers kind of associated with these items. The number 10 for property condition assessment. So these numbers are the actual numbers that are on the application checklist. We just thought it'd be easy to kind of go between back and forth on them, and you know what we're actually referring to on that application checklist. The second part of this is I'm going to kind of do these in order of when we recommend that these items are done in order to get them accomplished before the application deadline. So the first slide here is going to go over 3 items that we recommend to be ordered from an expert or a consultant, not at least 90 days before application if you want to get them complete before the application deadline. So those 3 items are the property condition assessment, the third-party market study or needs assessment, and the phase 1 environmental report. Now, one of the other things I'll mention here is that you'll see that some of these items are going to be highlighted. That just means that we're going to go a little bit more in depth on these items after we kind of go through the entire list here. So, all right, next slide. So there are going to be 6 items that we recommend are ordered or prepared 60 days before the application deadline. And they are the appraisal, the architectural drawings, which is just the full set of schematic drawings if the property condition assessment reveals the need for the work. Cost estimates, which are done after the PCA or CNA, and then letter of consistency with the city's consolidated plan, and only in an entitlement community. So if you have questions regarding an entitlement community, you can always reach out to your DEVO in your region, and they'll help you ascertain whether or not you're in an entitlement community there.
Just want to clarify, DEVO is our internal abbreviation for your housing development specialist.
And then the additional items that are on that 60-day list are the letters of funding commitments and the Division of Housing budget spreadsheet. So as you see, we're going to go over that Division of Housing budget spreadsheet a little bit later, but that's an important one there. All right, next slide. So the next few slides here are going to be the items that are going to be ordered or prepared 30 days before the application deadline. There's 21 of these, so I'm going to just kind of go down the list here. And same thing, you'll see some of them are going to be highlighted or in bold, and that's what we'll speak about a little bit later. But I'll go down the list here. Signatory authority, the IRS or Internal Revenue Service determination letter, audited financial statements, unless it is a newly formed cooperative, development team company bios, and the rendering or photo of the project that's associated with this. Additional 30-day items are the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, broadband infrastructure, just a fancy name for internet service there. The FEMA floodplain map, or the Federal Emergency Management Agency website, the floodplain map from FEMA website. So site control and zoning documentation. And again, we're going to go a little bit more in depth on the site control and zoning documentation after the rest of these slides. Additional 30-day items are the voluntary acquisition form, the rent roll or owner list with the resident incomes, proof of publication, and the W-9. Certificate of good standing, and then the signature block for the borrower/grantee, and the signature block for the owner. And the last of the 30-day items here, I know there was a lot, the borrower/grantee entity structure, ground lease, land trust information or condo declaration, use covenant, the draft general contractor agreement for infrastructure or work in the PCA. And I know we're going to go a little bit more in depth here right after this, but I didn't know if you had any questions before we move on to our in-depth. Okay. All right. Well, with that, then I will pass it on over to Pam.
Pam, you're muted.
Thank you so much. That won't be the last time, but I appreciate that. Okay, we'll start with the appraisal. A mobile home park appraisal is a specific professional evaluation of a property's value, which is conducted by a certified appraiser. Appraisals are required for Division of Housing funding applications that include acquisition of property. An application for funding only for infrastructure does not require an appraisal. These reports can be no more than 6 months old at the time you apply for funding. If you have an appraisal that is dated 8 months ago, for example, you will need to order a new report. Homeownership projects, such as mobile home communities, are valued in an as-is condition based on existing subsidized rents or rent restrictions. Land value should be reported separately in the same appraisal report. Next up is architectural drawings. These are detailed sketches that are used in design and construction, and they document existing buildings and other structures on a property. These drawings are only required if a property inspector shows a need for rehab work to be done, or if it's an infrastructure application. You will want to ask your architect to prepare a full set of schematic drawings that include elevations, site plan, utilities, floor plan, engineering, and drainage grading. Cost estimates. Cost estimates for materials and labor are submitted when a project includes infrastructure, rehabilitation, or new construction. The estimates must come from a contractor who is not part of the project team. Similar to architectural drawings, cost estimates are only needed if there is work to be done or if the application is requesting funding for infrastructure repair or replacement. These estimates from your contractor must be dated within 6 months of the application to ensure they reflect current pricing. And these costs must match those in the budget spreadsheet, which will be explained later in this webinar. I'll stop here to ask if there are any questions on appraisals, architectural drawings, or cost estimates.
We do have a question in the chat, Pam, but it is not regarding the documents. I was
No
trying to type
problem.
out the answer. I think it'd be easier just answer.
Okay.
So the question is, you are willing to do up to $55,000 in assistance for infrastructure, but require other lending commitments. Is this just considered gap funding or percentage of construction costs? I'm really asking whether there is a cap on how much you would fund for a given project. So happy to answer that one. So the max you can request is up to the 55,000 or 50,000 per qualified lot. But we would expect there to be other funding in the project. We do have, you are being scored. These are competitive applications, and part of our scoring criteria speaks to what percentage we would could be in a project for scoring purposes. But each project's need is definitely different. As long as you are under those per qualified lot amounts, it is something we can look at, but that's something you'll work with your housing development specialist on, is kind of right sizing your request to be competitive and meet your needs. The next question we have is, who can initiate the appraisal?
I can take that. The applicant can initiate the appraisal. You can send out an RFQ, a request for qualifications, and you can choose one of the responses for someone you want to work with based on their reputation, based on the cost, based on their timing, anything else that's important to you.
I will just follow that with saying RFQs are not required by any means, but definitely a good business practice. We have another question. Apologies if I missed this, but are market studies required for infrastructure applications? I'm happy to take that one.
Please
So
do.
market studies are required. Market studies or a housing needs assessment are required to ensure that there is a need and a demand for the AMI restrictions and number of units that you are going to have in place with our funding. So we will be putting that 30-year use covenant on the property. That's going to outline how many of the lots will have to remain at or below 100% AMI for home ownership opportunities. And so we do use that market study or housing needs assessment to verify that there is a need for that AMI level and number of lots in the community. And unless anyone else has any other questions, I think you're good to keep moving, Pam.
Okay. Next up is the property condition assessment. A property condition assessment, or a PCA as it's called, is a report written by an inspector or engineer after a detailed inspection of the property's condition. This may also be referred to as a community needs assessment, or CNA. This report gives you and the Division of Housing an understanding of the necessary work and the costs to make the property safe and stable for years to come. And as mentioned earlier, a PCA or CNA will determine whether architectural drawings and cost estimates are required to be submitted with your application. You will want to make sure it's dated within the previous 12 months of your application deadline and covers the work needed over the next 15 years. The inspector should also assess the underground utility infrastructure if it is a mobile home park. For the third-party market study, if you would switch the slide, please. Thank you. Oh, I think we're one more. Thank you. Consultants are hired to perform an analysis of the local real estate market as it relates to the mobile home park. Their analysis will determine current value, potential for growth, and offer insights into occupancy and lot rental rates. And I will stop here to see if there are any questions about cost estimates, property condition assessments, or market studies, or anything else that comes to mind.
I will just mention that one of our housing development specialists, Evan, did put a note in the chat to everyone, something to keep in mind. One thing to consider that the PCA or CNA typically provide an estimated project cost, but we do require a separate cost estimate in addition to the information in that PCA and CNA, and that it's because the estimated cost in the PCA, CNA, and the physical cost estimate can be very different from each other. And so we just want to ensure that you are using actual costs in your budget to us from your selected general contractor for the project. Any other questions, comments on those for Pam? I think you're good, Pam.
Okay, thank you for chiming in, Evan. Site control. Site control defines legal authority for the property. At the time of application for acquisition funding for the mobile home park cooperative must have a written agreement with the seller that shows their commitment to sell the property to the applicant once contract conditions are met. If the co-op coming into DOH for infrastructure funding is coming into DOH for infrastructure funding, a deed of sale will prove their ownership. For acquisition, applicant ownership or pending ownership is required by the Division of Housing. Next, we'll talk about zoning documentation. A city or town's planning department can tell you whether your mobile home park is properly zoned. If it is properly zoned, the park is in compliance with the local land use code. Applicants can confirm the zoning of their park through their local planning department. The Phase 1 environmental report is conducted by a qualified environmental consultant who researches the historical uses of the site, examines the soil, and identifies any recognized environmental conditions, also called RECs, R-E-C. If the site has been exposed to a possible contaminant, the consultant will do a more detailed assessment called a Phase 2. Phase 1 reports are required for all funding applications. Before we move on, are there any questions about site control, zoning, or Phase 1 environmental reports?
There's
Okay.
nothing on the Phase 1s, but Anne Marie, I will follow up with you separately on postings. There is a question, are there any flood insurance requirements? Happy to speak to that one if you want me to, Pam.
Please do.
So, something that Division of Housing does require is a FEMA floodplain map to determine whether the project is within a floodplain. If it is within a floodplain, depending on what type of floodplain it is in, it could potentially cause concerns for funding or be a potential hurdle for funding. And that is when we would require potentially some evidence of flood insurance. Happy to get into details on that with you separately via email. We do have our flood insurance, our insurance language from our contracts that you can find on our website. This is one of those case by case basis. We would need to evaluate the project and follow up.
Great. Thank you, Fallon.
Mhm.
Okay, next is the budget spreadsheet. So this is a required document that shows costs, rental income, annual expenses, sources of funding, and a pro forma that compiles data from other tabs. You can find the template on DOH's funding application webpage at the address shown here. I will briefly introduce the sections of the spreadsheet. There's a lot more to cover, and I recommend reviewing the spreadsheet with your housing development specialist for more detailed instruction. So we're going to go high level here. Starting with the table of contents, this tab shows the, you'll see this tab shows the tabs that you will be using to complete the budget spreadsheet. So there are 4 tabs in yellow required for your application, and we'll be going through each of the tabs in order. Each tab is linked to bring information from one tab into one of the next tabs as applicable. First, we'll look at the development budget. After that, we'll move to the income and expenses tab. Next is the financing tab, and finally the pro forma tab. So the development budget is where you will enter all of the costs related to your purchase of the mobile home park or the repair and replacement of the infrastructure. Not all of the categories are shown in the clip on the screen. I thought it would be too small to see, but you can get an idea. And you can also download the spreadsheet from our website, and we can give you more direction on that. So
Links are in the chat, Pam.
Perfect. Thank you. Categories are broken down into large headings, such as acquisition costs, site improvements, professional fees, and reserves. Within the first category called acquisition costs, for example, you'll see that this section asks for information about land cost as separate from the cost of existing structures. This table calculates costs per lot and costs per square foot for each of the line items. And as I said before, the tabs are linked, so the information does not need to be entered twice in the spreadsheet. And I realize this is a very high overview. However, I want to ask if anyone has a question about the development cost tab at this time. Okay, we'll move on to income and expenses. This is where you see how much lot rent is being collected each month. There are breakdowns for the type of lot, either owned, rented, or vacant, and the size of the lot. When you get to this tab, you'll also see the income of each homeowner in terms of their percentage of the area median income. And you might remember, as Shirley said, only homes with owners earning at or below 100% of the area median income in your community can receive funding for this project, for that project. On the right side of the table is the expenses section. Here you would add annual expenses related to salaries and administrative supplies, maintenance expenses, utilities, and other costs. Again, this page is cut short for this presentation. And I'll hold up to see if there are any questions about the income and expenses tab. Okay. Next tab is called financing. It shows sources of income to support either the purchase of the mobile home park or the costs for infrastructure repair or replacement. Your financing could come in various forms, such as a bank loan that requires regular payments, cash flow loans with payments due after a period of time, grants and loans from the Division of Housing, local government or foundations, and any cash investment from the applicant, which is called equity. The most important calculation on this page is making sure sources of funding on this tab add up to the costs on the development budget. If costs are higher than the project has funding for, it is called a gap. This gap will need to be filled with additional funding from current or new sources. Are there any questions about the financing tab? Okay. Finally, we have the pro forma tab. This is a type of financial statement that projects today's assumptions to forecast the project's performance over time. And DOH forecasts for 40 years. And that will help us determine the strength of the project. Again, there's more data on this page than you can see right now. The first calculation adds up the first year of expected rental income and any other income. That could be laundry income or parking income. Then we subtract 7% of that income because there might be lot vacancies and or non-payment of lot rent by one or more households in a given month. We then subtract annual expenses related to salaries, maintenance costs, utilities, and other categories. This tells us how much, quote, operating income you could expect before payment of any loans or other financial commitments. Once the income amount is subtracted by any bank loans and expenses, the table will show the amount of cash flow that is left to pay off some of the, quote, soft debts, as we call them. This could include non-bank must-pay loans from the Division of Housing or a local government fund that loans dollars to support current and future affordable housing projects. If you have limited experience with financial spreadsheets, these concepts might be hard to grasp at first. Your housing development specialist can walk through each portion of the spreadsheet with you. Any questions on the pro forma tab at this time or any other part of the budget spreadsheet? Okay, now I'm going to send it back to Shirley to share the next section, introducing other funding sources for your project.
Okay, I'm going to recognize that we have about 20 minutes left. And we do not have 20 slides left, so I'm going to work through these as optimally as possible. I will still pause for questions. If you want to save them for the end, we have a question and comment period at the end scheduled as well. So we have a few sources that we suggest that can help with funding. Thistle Community Housing was already named a little bit earlier. And of course, we have them here. They provide technical assistance and possibly some funding to residents wanting to purchase their park. They help the residents form cooperatives and become resident-owned communities or ROCs. Thistle helps the cooperative with the DOH application process, locate other funding sources, and Thistle has some funding for rent stabilization. So they are not, sometimes they are contributing towards the closing of the park, but that's something that they would cover with you. And they will work with a ROC for up to 10 years. ROC USA is a national resource that helps parks with 25 or more lots to purchase their park with a lower interest loan than a conventional bank. And Thistle works with Rock USA to help residents acquire a loan if possible. We also have the Impact Development Fund that can provide low interest rate loans towards the purchase of a park. Next slide.
We do have a question in the chat. I'm going to see if Ben, who chimed in earlier from Thistle, would be willing to answer this as it is directed at Thistle.
Great.
What types of technical assistance does Thistle Community Housing provide? Ben, would you be? Oh, he cannot unmute. I did not realize that.
I think
Will you just?
There we go. He's on.
Yeah, I think it's working now. Yeah, hey everybody. This is Ben Moore from Thistle Community Housing. We provide a lot of technical assistance. It would be tough to break that down into something succinct, but I think what's most pertinent to this conversation is direct technical assistance with the acquisition process. So everything from the formation of the cooperative to conversations with municipalities, counties, walking you through the process of applying for these funds through DOLA, connecting you with the necessary third-party contractors, attorneys, engineers. So we like to think it's pretty all-inclusive to make it possible for a cooperative to acquire the park. But if I'm happy to provide details and documents, if you send me an email.
Thank you so much, Ben. Michelle, can you please translate the next question?
Sure. The next question is Rock USA the best option to get a loan, or is Ruth, help me out. What is inversionista? Like an investor? So is it Rock USA or an investor is better for a loan?
So historically, I would say that Rock USA, they will only work on funding for parks of 25 or higher. So a smaller park would need to utilize like Impact Development Fund. An investor, absolutely. If a park can find an investor in their local community that wants to contribute and offer financing, and then, again, it can be combined with us if the buyer is, that Rock as well, or even another entity. So an investor can come in. I think it just depends on, the rate and what it's going to mean for lot rents and, based on the terms. Often they'll beat a local funder. I mean, the banks, they have what the rates are and they are what they are. But Rock and Impact Development Fund definitely have subsidized rates. So they are typically quite a few points lower than a local bank.
I will just add to that, you should be exploring every funding source available out there. Because oftentimes these projects take a lot of what's called financial stacking, which means you're going to need a variety of different funding sources to be able to keep your lot rents affordable. I think that's it, Shirley.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Ben and Fallon. So local lenders can help a buyer, even a cooperative, with a loan to aid in the purchase. It is likely to be a higher interest rate loan and possibly can impact affordability for the park in terms of repayment without increasing the lot rents. Nonprofits like a community land trust or local housing organization, housing authority can be assigned the right to purchase on behalf of the residents in an effort to keep the park affordable. So they can also pursue grant funding sources a cooperative cannot. A local government can intervene to purchase and maintain affordability. And local governments also may have access to a source of funding that they can dedicate towards the purchase. They The local government can own the infrastructure, which opens up additional, again, funding sources that are for repair or replacement that potentially only a municipality can access. So meeting with your local government to learn more is really helpful around these other funding sources. Next slide, please. So community members, we obviously hope that Thistle would be here, and we have put their website link into the chat as well as in the slide. To learn about community land trusts in Colorado, you can go to the Schumacher Center for New Economics. That link is also going to be placed in the chat. This webpage lists Colorado community land trusts. Your housing development specialist can also help you locate one in your region. Some of the land trusts are already involved in helping residents to preserve affordability around the state by purchasing parks. To find your local nonprofits that may be able to help with some grant funding, talk to your local government staff, your housing authority, your community land trust, and search the internet. Also, your housing development specialist working in the region, because they are local as well. They may also have some suggestions for you on ways to find some grant funding. So networking can really help you make connections to funding that will help keep the lots affordable. Again, like Fallon just said, you want to look at every resource that you can, particularly ones that don't require repayment of any funding. That helps a lot. Also, part of the community organizations that can help are the Mobile Home Park Oversight Program staff and the Colorado Poverty Law Organization. So they will work with residents, and their links are going to be provided in just a few slides. And then I touched on your local governments and how they might help with funding to purchase or for infrastructure repairs or replacement. So connecting with staff and elected officials can really help create community awareness and buy-in to keep your home affordable. In my region, I've had several articles in the newspapers about parks that, where residents wanted to purchase the park. So that community awareness is really helpful. Next slide. So the Division of Housing, we have a set aside of Prop 123 funds for pre-development for small nonprofits, local governments, or housing authorities with less than $4 million in liquid assets. This is a grant for up to $25,000 for costs such as appraisals or inspections, with a complete list of eligible items in the NOFA. The next cycle is May 1st, and at this time, that may be the last opportunity to apply. So if you are a park working on a purchase or infrastructure funding with a small organization helping you, please reach out to your housing development specialist to discuss this grant funding for May 1st with the letter of intent to apply due April 16th. And the link is in the chat for the NOFA as well. Next slide.
I do just want to specify real quick, Shirley, on our pre-development program, that the co-op themselves are not an eligible applicant.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. It does have to be that small nonprofit, small housing authority, or government entity or tribe.
Thank you. So in conclusion, some of the items that we've covered today are residents of a mobile home park receiving a notice of intent to sell need to meet as a community and discuss their options right away. The Division of Housing application cycle, it may not be in sync with the purchase timeline. Reach out and talk to available resources to make an informed decision about whether purchasing a park or not is viable as residents. And then contact your housing development specialist early and as often as needed. Jose, would you please continue? Next slide.
So thanks again, everyone, for attending this presentation. We'll open it up to questions and comments. So I know we've gotten a bunch over the chat and raised hands earlier. So if you've been holding on to those questions, reach out right now.
Not seeing any. Please also keep in mind if something comes to mind after we end today, you are welcome to reach out to your housing development specialist or any of the presenters today, and they can answer any questions you may have that come to mind later. Oh, there was a question. Can these slides be shared with the people outside of the program?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'll be giving you the information on how the slides, where they will be posted.
Michelle actually already put the link in the chat earlier, so they are available in the chat.
Yep.
And they will be on our training website as well that she also linked.
Thank you. Next slide.
So as Fallon mentioned, so here's our contact information for the Colorado Division of Housing, the Mobile Home Park Oversight Division, and then the Colorado Poverty Law Project. So you'll see the web pages and the phone numbers there. And then next slide.
We did have a question come across. They're unable to copy and paste the chat since there are a lot of links. Are you able to send out an email with the chat? We will be emailing out the presentation to all the attendees. It's also on that training website, if you can just copy that training website. And all of the links that were shared are within the presentation. So if you just have the presentation link, you can access all the others. I am unsure if we are able to share the chat or not. Michelle or someone else?
Yeah, I could definitely download the chat. The links that I posted in the chat are part of the slides as well. So I was just duplicating it for people who can't select the link as we're presenting.
We got a comment that the presentation link is not working.
Oh, the presentation link is not working. That's unfortunate. Okay, we'll follow up, Dan.
We will fix that.
I
So
was
this is-
able,
Sorry.
I was able to open it from my side, Michelle, just. So it may be an external issue. It is all publicly shared. It's all on our trainings website that we had mentioned.
So this is our final slide today, and we just want to thank you for your time and all of your questions. Again, the Housing Development Specialist is your primary resource if you want to know more about purchasing your park. You can take a picture of the QR code with your smartphone or go to the website that is posted below and has been included in the chat. The recording of this presentation and the slides will be posted on the Division of Housing website, and you can find the link to the website in the chat. If you would like a copy of the slides or have any questions, please reach out to the email address listed in the chat, which is ohfs_webinarseries@state.co.us. And then, of course, we said everything will be posted, and we will try to make sure we reach everybody. If you even were to just Google search Housing Development Specialist, you would be able to find us and the map and the web page and all of that. So if we don't reach you, please reach out to us.
If anyone else would like to provide their email address here for the slides link, please feel free to do so. I am copying them into an email and can send them out. Any last minute questions, comments? I just want to thank the entire group that put this together. I know it's been a lot of days, a lot of weeks of putting this together, and we appreciate everyone that attended. We hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
And let's stay in.